Hello, and welcome to another Front Office Sports webinar. Joe Londergan here with you once again. As we get started, a few housekeeping things. If you have questions for our panelists, feel free to drop those in the questions tab. And also feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. We're all about making new connections, as always, at FOS. And if you don't mind clicking the bell at the top so that there's a line through it, that way you will save yourself a headache with all the chat notifications that you're going to hear. But without further ado, we can jump into the reason that we're all here, and that's to talk about franchising as a career opportunity. Obviously, the last couple months have created a lot of economic uncertainty in all parts of the world, but especially in the US. So we are going to talk to Mr. David Weaver of FranChoice and his distinguished panel of guests here to kind of talk about the things that they've noticed within the franchising space and what brought them to such a career choice. So let's start off with David, if you don't mind, telling the audience a little bit about who you are and what FranChoice does exactly.
Thank you, Joe. So through FranChoice, I'm a franchise consultant. And really what I do is help people pivot from what they know, a corporate job, into something that they want to do, but they're not really familiar with, which is business ownership through franchising. And so I kind of see my role as a franchise consultant closely aligned with an executive recruiter in the franchise space, guiding people through a process of understanding how to conduct your due diligence, how to ask the franchisors the right questions. I want to make sure that you're talking to franchise owners to verify the information you're getting from the franchisor, et cetera, so that ultimately you're making an educated decision and you can understand what you're getting into before you spend any money or time trying to build a business.
Awesome. So with that, let's talk to our panel here. Let's start with Jessica. If you could tell the audience a little bit about who you are and what brought you to the franchising game that you're currently working on here.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Jess. I live in Philadelphia. I'm the owner of a dumpster company. So we sell dumpsters and toilets. Super glamorous business. I do have a background in engineering and also have some experience managing large construction projects. I never thought franchising would be for me. I mean, I thought I'd be crazy to spend money on royalties. I knew I always wanted to start my own business though. And it started to change for me when I met, one of my friends who is, I think, a very intelligent guy, got into franchising. And I was like, oh, I better consider this. I've got 3 young kids. Very young, 4, 2, and 1. And so for me, fitting more on my plate was a big consideration for me. And franchising started to kind of open my eyes to this world of like, maybe I can do all of this. And so I started looking into it. I found Dave actually through listening to a podcast. And I reached out to him, we connected, had quite a journey, but it brought me to my current company now.
Joe, can I jump in there for a second? When Jess heard my name on a podcast, she was pretty geared up and focused on a yoga concept. So I just want to show the juxtaposition between what she thought she wanted when she started and what she ultimately ended up buying and becoming a business owner in the dumpster business.
Not down in the dumpster very long. We can appreciate that. But with that, let's meet Rob and Wayne. I know you guys are a team venturing into the franchise world for the first time, but would love to know, what brought you guys to franchising and what some of your stops were along the way to that decision.
Rob, you want to start?
Yeah, so thanks, Joe, and Doug for having us on. Good job, Jess, by the way. So my name is Rob Stolker. This is Wayne Jordan. We've been friends for 30-something years. Also, I've started businesses for the last 30 years. Starting with Wayne and I had a trading floor with a lot of other friends and I in the 90s, sold out of that in 2003. I owned a solar panel installation company and from 2008 to 2014 or so when the incentives were great in New Jersey where I am. And my latest venture, it took me about 3 years, but I made the first ever girls lacrosse headgear. Hummingbird Sports is my company. And Wayne and I, have talked about getting into the franchise world for, a decade at least. We always felt it was something we wanted to do. It was just, getting started and getting into it, and that's why we're here. So we're excited about it.
And just to kind of feed over what Rob was saying, I woke up probably 10 months ago, and I was like, I wanted to. I felt like it was the right time, as I always wanted to own my own company. I felt like I woke up 10 months ago. I'm like, you know what? I think this is a time to venture out and see what company or what type of business model would work for us. And obviously, we reached out to David Weaver, who's been amazing during this whole process and gave us a lot of good insight. It was the whole process these last 9 months has been very educational for us. First we didn't know what type of business concept we wanted to do, but when we kind of narrowed it down to the food concept, we looked at a couple different franchises. One, we actually went down to Florida, went to Discovery Day, and even though we weren't really dead set on that particular franchise, it was more for educational purposes, just go to a Discovery Day and see what it was like. But at the end of the day, it was a long process, but learned a lot. And again, for us, it was really getting it, making the right decision the first time. But, when I look at this year of everything we've gone through, it couldn't be more of a perfect time for us. Some people with the pandemic and everything, like people big decision to start your own business. Coming from the Wall Street days when I used to work on Wall Street, and you look at when the stock market's down, great time to buy. And I look at it like in this aspect where, there are a lot of benefits to starting a business now than it was 9 months ago that helped us make better choices now than it would, so I think it couldn't have been more of a perfect time for us to, sign on. We just signed on with Bubba Koo Burritos yesterday, and we're excited to get rolling and hopefully open up our first store in the early spring. So we're excited.
Congratulations to you both on that. And I feel like that's a good way to segue into the next thing that we're going to talk about here. You mentioned that the pandemic has created, this environment where it's an interesting time and an exciting time really to start your own business. But, open this up to the larger group. What other opportunities do you feel that the pandemic has created in terms of people looking to get into franchising or start their own business in general? Whoever would like to start.
Yeah, I can speak some. So, so I joined a business networking group when I became my own business owner. And some of the people talked about how it's like everybody is starting their business again. Like the pandemic kind of forced everybody to say, who am I? Who are my customers? And revisit all of those relationships and those connections anyway. So there's a lot of moving and shifting happening right now to begin with. So it's kind of a good time to be a new entrant. I do also think, speaking just for my industry as well, dumpsters are selling like hotcakes now. People are at home renovations are going crazy right now. And, it's something I would have never predicted. Like Dave said, I almost did a yoga studio, and I'm glad I didn't, so I'm not to sit here and say oh, this pandemic is good for everybody and the business that they chose. But at the end of the day, if this is for you, if you think if you have that itch to own your own business and to go off on your own, that driving force will kind of lead you through this whole process, and it'll be worth it. I really think that.
Yeah. And, for me, it's, seeing everything that's happened the last few months, obviously our country is very strong and able to keep moving forward. And I've seen, including myself, a lot of everyone's very supportive to local businesses, and nobody wants to see any business go out of business. So, as we're getting into the food business, and a lot of people, and it's amazing how everyone's kind of pulled together. They, a lot of these restaurants, whether it's fast food or full service, they're made some temporary changes to help keep their business going. And a lot of the communities all over the country, or at least in New Jersey, because I live in New Jersey, obviously, very, very supportive in coming out and keeping these all these business owners going and stuff. And I feel like we could overcome anything. Rob and I, it's definitely changed our mindset with the amount of square footage that we need based on what we've seen, especially through the fast food industry. We don't need a huge storefront, and we're very confident that if in any kind of situation, we'll be okay. We'll get through any kind of economy or anything like that. And looking forward to and part of that is me, and Rob and I will be reaching out to the community and building relationships with the community and helping out. So we're excited for that end as well.
Yeah, that's one thing I was going to say is that, I'm a member of an entrepreneurs organization too, EO, New Jersey Global Organization. But as a business owner and talking to other business owners, to be able to start this business and start a franchise and be able to look forward to, changing lives and helping people and, forming the culture that Wayne and I want to form, that's only gotten stronger and better. And we've just been more affirmed by we're doing the right thing by, opening up, as many of these franchise locations as we can over the next 10 years and hiring people from within and, and feeling good that we're doing something good.
Fantastic.
So,
go ahead, David.
Joe, what I would say is, as it relates to the pandemic, the first business that I was at the helm was a family business back in Detroit. I was running a foundry in when the towers came down 9/11, right? And then I was in the finance business, lending money to startup companies and franchises in 2008, 2009 financial crisis. And so as I look to what's happening today, and I kind of pay attention to what was the cycle after the event. And so kind of why would you invest into the event, as Wayne was saying, like, you invest when everybody's running for the hills. It's a good time to invest for some. I'm currently looking at some service-based brands, and I'm toggling between an installation franchise and a flooring franchise, right? Also not super glamorous, but one of the things that I look for is what is the shift that's happening in the consumer behavior? As an example, I never thought buying groceries online was a good idea. Jess brought it up to me back when we were talking in March. She's like, I always buy my groceries online. I was like, that's crazy. And now that's what we do, right? So think about how our students are learning. So learning is pivoting dramatically. We've seen a massive shift in boating and RV, right? So how do you have a business that attaches to boating and RV? Because nobody could do anything, so everybody went camping this summer, right? So industries are definitely shifting. And so, I put a LinkedIn post out a couple of weeks ago. The non-sexy is now sexy, right? So in 2019, everybody wanted to do something cool like yoga, trendy, a bar, a fitness concept, something fun and cool. Today, people are pretty excited about restoration, dumpster companies, tree trimming, like businesses that A can go do their service, and B, people are spending money on because they're not vacationing and they're not going out to restaurants and things like that. So as it relates to franchising and what am I looking for in sort of a pivot like this, I would be looking to the franchisor for what do they deliver at the franchise level in terms of technology or whatnot that gives me a leverage position, right? So in Rob and Wayne's case, if you're getting into the food business, does the franchisor have a mobile app for ordering and takeout and all of that? Because some small businesses do and some small businesses don't, right? So how does the franchisor give you the leverage that positions you in a strong way as you're the entire country is kind of growing out of this hole that we've created?
100%, and appreciate the insight on the industries that are, taking proper advantage of the situation here. Rob, I'm curious to kind of start with you on this next topic. Obviously, we've talked a lot about the opportunities that are present here, but what personality traits need to be present in an entrepreneur in order to succeed in this? And Rob, given that you have a background in sports, as does most of our audience, curious to know your thoughts on the crossover, the Venn diagram, if you will, between people who can find success in sports as well as find their way into the world of franchising.
I can tell you what it takes to be an entrepreneur and start a business, but I can't tell you that I do all those things. Now, one example is patience is really key, and I'm the least patient person in the world. And so it's just constantly working on my patience, and when an issue comes up, I want to solve it right away. And it's a lot to be an entrepreneur, start a business, but I love every minute of it. I love the excitement of it. I love the unknowns. When I created this Girls Lacrosse headgear, I didn't know anything about lacrosse. I didn't know anything about making a helmet, and it took us 3 years, but we have some amazing patents on what is basically a soft headgear that withstands an impact. And again, it was just all the learning process, asking the questions, listening, some of those sleepless nights. And again, I would just have to keep telling myself that, I have 4 teenage daughters. I have to take care of myself. I have to take care of them. I want to be around them. I want to, separate myself when it's time to separate myself. It's really hard to do. It's really, really, really hard to do. And then I'm writing a book about everything I'm doing that's launching in October. Sorry, quick plug there for it. But, that's all taken about 1.5 years too to put it all together. So, there's a lot that goes into it. It's a lot of sleepless nights, but it's just, for us, and to start a business with Wayne, who's been a good friend for a long time. It's just excitement, keeps you young. It's great.
Hands in a lot of pies for sure. Jessica, we'll go to you then. What traits do you think are necessary for an entrepreneur to have to find success the way that you have with your dumpster business here?
Yeah, so I'll give you some my personal perspective on it. I don't speak to be an expert on it, but this is actually a revelation I had through my work with Dave, and that I kind of, my process to get to where I am now had a lot of kind of different steps to it, a lot of twists and turns. And, Dave pointed out that I'm that kind of person that really seems to thrive in chaos. And that was always actually almost kind of a point of shame for me. And that wow, I do surround myself with chaos. I need to somehow try to bring order to my life. And when Dave actually pointed that out to me, it brought this big light bulb went off in my head. And I'm like, okay, it's something that differentiates me, I can do well in this because I thrive in chaos, and there's just a lot of moving pieces when you're starting a business, and you kind of have to have your head on a swivel as you're dealing with all of it. So that's one thing, but the other thing I'll say is that you have to be able to take your eye off of the things that are right in front of you and need to be dealt with, and think long term down the road. I heard this analogy as I was going through this process. It's like, if you want to get where you want to be in life, say you own an ice cream store, right? And you want to get to your certain revenue goal, whatever your profit goals. It's like, you need to do 2 things, right? You need to scoop 200 scoops of ice cream per day, and you need to have 4 ice cream stores open. It's really easy to get lost in that scooping the ice cream step, because there's so many pieces to it. And you could spend all your time in there. So you have to be able to take a step back and do it fairly quickly, and be able to say, what are those things? What are those fundamental things I need to be doing to get me to where I want to be? And that's what's really cool about franchising, I think, is that it's like you have a built model and a built system so that you can get somewhere really quickly. You know, like there's a way to get there quickly as long as you have your head on straight. Like that's why you're spending this money for a system, so that you can get there quickly. I was a little, I don't know if I answered it completely, so I kind of feel like I kind of digressed, but.
Jess, I thought you gave a great answer.
Thanks, Dave.
Joe, one of the things that I often tell people is simple doesn't mean easy, right? So franchising makes a business model simple so that more people or most people can execute against the system that they've created, for scooping ice cream in Jessica's example. But to Wayne's point, that doesn't mean that it's easy to do, right? So what does it take to be a successful entrepreneur? And I don't care if you're a franchise owner or a regular business owner, independent entrepreneur, whatever. You really need to do two things, right? You need to attract customers and make them happy and want them to come back, right? So you got to be able to, as the business owner, your job is to go out and build your customer base and keep them coming back over and over again. And then your other job is to hire great people and build good teams and have employees that want to stay. And those employees also attract other high quality people. If you can do those two things, like, the sky's the limit, right? Neither one of those things is very easy to do. Just ask any business owner. But you know, it's not that challenging, or it's not that complicated, right? So the other thing that Rob pointed out that I think is really important, that I see a lot in my business and in my consulting part of my business, is managing your state. If you're a Tony Robbins guy, you manage your state, right? And that's really what Rob was pointing out. I gets impatient, right? So one of the biggest things that I talk to people about is bringing this fear of the unknown to the forefront, right? Because stepping out into your first business, or you don't know what the hell you're getting into, and it's scary. And Rob, a serial entrepreneur who's done lots of really different things, just shared with all of you what that means. I mean, I think he said sleepless nights like 7 times, right? So, that's what he's talking about. Yeah. And honestly, I'm on the cusp of making a new venture for myself. We exited our last franchise in 2017, and I've been chomping at the bit. And I recognize over the last 3 nights, I'm waking up at 3:30 to 4 o'clock in the morning, and I'm just lying there thinking, and my brain is going, what am I forgetting? Whatever. That's what juices me, though. So that fear kind of is a motivator and a driver. And that's very much like sports, right? We have a very sports-centric audience, and everybody knows what that feels like. That, to me, is what makes business ownership exciting, right? If you weren't taking a chance and you weren't scaring yourself a little bit, then the opportunity is not big enough to be worth it, in my mind.
And kind of feeding off a little bit what Dave was saying, like, I'm only as good as the team around me. So obviously, as I always go back to sports analogies and how is someone like Bill Belichick always so successful? Because he's got really good players. So for me, it's about having the not perfect team, but qualified team that'll help support my success or mine and Rob's success. And and obviously, you can't go in this blindfolded. You have to have a game plan. Whether obviously Rob's had a few businesses, and he's had a game plan. And for us now, going into the franchise world, have a game plan, but more importantly, it's following the playbook that Bubba Coos is going to provide us, and not reinventing the wheel. There's a reason why we're going into the franchise business. It's not just going just winging it and doing what we want to do. Obviously they have over 30 locations, and they're open. Obviously, most likely they're successful. But again, it's following what the information and the resources they have provided to us, and we that's why we paid money to go into a franchise. So very confident that if we follow that guide, that we will be very successful.
I think something that a lot of people who have held leadership positions within sport can relate to is the team building aspect that you were talking about, right? If you bring in good players, then part of the job's already done. So curious to get the rest of the panel's kind of opinion on team building as a whole as it relates to franchising. You know, what are some things to kind of keep in mind as you tend to build out your staff and find the people who are going to help accomplish what you want to within the business realm?
Yeah, again, I'm new to it. You know, I've worked with teams, I've built teams, I've had people that have worked under me, but in terms of like owning this business and actually like having this really intimate sense of ownership of these people and this culture that I'm trying to build, I'm new to it. But I will say this is, I was just telling the group before we got on with the audience that like I've already, you know, I've only been doing this for a short while, and I already had to fire someone and hire a new person. And that's because I know that, right, what's that saying? Hard decisions, easy life, you know, easy decisions, hard life. And it's like the team that I build is going to make my life easy or hard. And it's really important that I get that aspect right. Like that's going to be the most challenging part of what I'm doing here. And so, I don't know. I don't know what the secret sauce is exactly, but like I feel very strongly that the people that I hire need to be brought into the process and feel ownership in it. You know, and that involves like me flying a truck driver to Minnesota to do training with me, you know, somebody who's never been on a plane before, you know, and to see how they're actually making our dumpsters and building them, bringing them in through the process, I think is really important.
Yeah, so I can tell you as far as you know, teamwork and building and being a leader is you know, understanding that people around you are people and they have their own issues and their own things going on, and just having an understanding and being there for them, and then you know, also networking and talking to other people. And one of the things I always try to do, and I heard this a long time ago, was when I'm talking to somebody, I always try to say, let me know if I can help you in any way. If I can help you, you know, I would love to, you know, in any way, just let me know. And it's about culture and building and staying positive. And, you know, like I said, knowing that, you know, everybody's different and everybody has their own things going on, and having an understanding. And to me, a little bit, it's also rolling up your sleeves and you know, getting a little dirty and showing everybody that you're part of the team too, even though you're a leader. So as an example, I owned a lot of real estate in Center City, Philadelphia. And when the Home Depot delivery would come, I would go out to the loading dock, and, you know, it's not like I, you know, would lift stuff like I would, but they saw that I was there, and they would kind of give me the little stuff to carry in. But just being part of a team, and I'm with, you know, everybody here, and you know, staying together is important, building the right culture.
Yeah, I would say Rob hit on what I focus on when I'm looking at a franchisor is, what does the leadership team look like at the franchisor level, and how does that translate into the culture at the franchisor level, and then how does that link with how I want to build the culture at my company? So yesterday I was talking to an executive in the franchise world, and she shared with me a very interesting visual, which I immediately wrote down. And leadership in franchising, if it's done correctly, in her opinion, it's an inverted, and you can use this for any business, right? It's an inverted pyramid, right? So the bottom of the pyramid, the big part of the V, is the customer and the customer's experience. And then it's your frontline employees. So we owned an Elements Massage. It's the massage therapist and how they view their job. And then it's your store manager, and then it's your franchise owner, and then at the very bottom of the is the CEO of the franchise, right? So you know, that's a servant leadership mentality, et cetera. So I think when you're thinking in terms of franchising, it's very important to link with, connect with, and understand the values of the leadership team at the franchisor, and does that sync with the value system that you're thinking about creating in your own organization. That's something that is typically overlooked by some, and when the candidate is really focused on it, they tend to find a really solid fit in the business and the franchise system they want to be part of.
David, when people come to you who are looking to get into franchising, what are some traits that they exhibit that make you, think on either end of the spectrum? Either this is a perfect opportunity for them, or maybe, come back to me once you fix X, Y, and Z. You know what I mean? So
that's a very interesting question. This happened just earlier this week. I told the gentleman, I don't think you're ready. I think you need to think about it, whatever. And the short answer is, I can show people how to. The how-to is easy for me, right? This is how you evaluate and create the business model you want to invest in. These are the franchise companies that match your investment criteria. These are the questions that you want to ask a franchisor. This is how we approach franchise owners so that you make a very educated decision. The how-to is relatively easy. What I cannot create is why. The why to has got to come from the candidate, right? And so if there's not a very strong drive and desire, Jessica said it perfectly, right? I knew I was going to be a business owner. I just didn't think it was going to be a franchise owner. So that's what I'm looking for as a franchise consultant. I don't work with everybody. I've been lucky enough to be doing this for 10 years, and I have relationships with over 200 different franchise brands, some of the best brands in the industry side in their respective segments. And so what I'm really trying to do is find people that are passionate about business ownership, and they just don't have the path. And I like that because I was that person for so many years. And so it's actually fun to share that with folks. Just share my experience. That's essentially what I'm doing in my consulting practice.
Yeah, and I'm gonna jump on kind of that experience that I had with Dave. Like for the longest time, I knew I wanted to own a business. I went back to business school and I was like, I'm gonna own a business, and then life hits you, and it's hard to make that jump. And in having a partner through it, like in working with Dave through this, it just made it like it helped me put a plan together to get to where I knew I wanted to be, but I just wasn't quite sure how to get there. And now my work-life balance has never been better, and I've just been like, I'm starting a brand new business, and I did it one of the fastest of the franchisees in my system, and I've got 3 young kids, and it's cool. There's lots of benefits to it, but like having that path to get here, it was helpful to have a partner in the journey.
I was glad to help.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to say for Wayne and I, even though we've been around business for a long time, we didn't know anything about the franchise business, and it started out with asking the simplest of question. We know what you don't know, and we didn't know. So David helped us through the process, asking the very basic of questions to start out with, and that's why it took a while for us. The feel had to be right, and just having that resource was really big for us.
One thing that was kind of fun working with Rob and Wayne is they have a bunch of colleagues and friends that are franchisees, and they have lots of stores in different kinds of brands. So they spent quite a bit of time, talking to their friends and getting to understand their experience as franchise owners, et cetera. And I had come out to New Jersey and gave a presentation to their group. And so they circled back with me. When we started our conversation, I flat out told them I'm not a huge fan of food concepts. And, this was back in 2019, before we even knew what Corona was going to do to the New Jersey market, right? But we looked at lots of different things. And they kept coming back to, I want to own a restaurant and I like this kind of, Wayne was like, I love burrito concepts, I think is what you said we came back to it. So, the burrito concept that they ended up going with was not a brand that I have a relationship with, right? And so when they brought that to me, I was like, fine. What we're going to do is go back to basics, right? I grew up in Indiana, so what do you do? Sports analogy, you got to shoot your free throws after basketball practice. And so, leadership team, systems and process, scalability, ongoing support. These are the questions you want to ask and get really granular on these core areas. And if this is the direction you want to go, then go and do it and dominate the market and whatever you want to do. You want to link your long-term goal. What do you want the business to do for you with how the franchise helps you do that, right? And so in Jessica's words, the franchise just lets you do it faster. And that's true for some, right? But we have to understand how the franchisor allows me to do it faster. And that's just through a little bit of guidance and questions and answers and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that I think that kind of kept steering me more towards the food service, and again, food service, it's sometimes depending on the food type of food service, it's obviously a tough industry, but it's a happy environment. I mean, people are going. I mean, everyone loves to eat, but people are going there, and sometimes it's like they're depending on the type of restaurant, but even like Bubba Coos, you walk. I don't know if anyone's ever been there, but has that shore vibe, and it's a nice local New Jersey thing. Good music, and you have some Jersey Shore stuff on the walls. It's got a nice little thing to it, and I mean, that was kind of, and when I looked at the type of foods, I mean, Mexican food. I mean, what would a typical average person want to eat more than once a week if they were going to go out and eat? I mean, you have your Italian, you have subs, and you have Mexican food. There are a couple other things that we were looking at. You looked at one like that mac and cheese. And even though everyone loves mac and cheese, but how many times could you eat mac and cheese over a week or a month? But Mexican food, and the Bubba Coos menu, great variety of food there. I mean, that's something that people could go more than once a week and eat there. And that was something that was important enough to make sure we got that type of food concept right.
I love it. And Wayne, you're right. I could eat Chipotle every single day of the week and not even bother. I could absolutely eat there every day.
Try Bubba Coos.
I can't wait. I can't wait to try it.
Exactly. Well,
but just real quick, I'm sorry, but to Wayne's point and Dave, what you're saying too is we heard this early on. It's got to be the right feel for us. Obviously, there's a million different franchises out there because the right feel for everybody is different. And so this we felt was the right fit for us, what we wanted to do, and was by far obviously the most important thing to us.
Totally makes sense. Appreciate the insight into the Bubba Coos business. Obviously there are many differences between owning your own business and working for a business owned by somebody else. But, in your entrepreneurial experiences, what's an aspect of that maybe people who are getting into business ownership for the first time don't necessarily think about?
In what ways? I could answer that probably.
Sure. Maybe we keep it specific to franchising. What's, someone from the outside comes in and they want to own a Bubba Coos burritos, and they think, oh, it'll just be like I'm working at a Bubba Coos every day. But what are some aspects of that maybe they don't necessarily think about in terms of making sure the business is successful long term?
That's okay. So I've got a good answer to that. And this is something that I talk about in my consultation and I circle back around in validation, et cetera. A lot of times people, they just don't know, like, how do I leave a day job where I'm getting paid every 2 weeks or once a month and start a business and then make a living, right? And so this is a little bit business planning. So we have a business budget conversation and I talk about, you need 3 buckets of money, right? You need the initial investment to get your Bubba Coos open, your store open. You need the second bucket of money is the working capital that you need to get that business to cash flow positive, right? Because the business is going to lose money in the first couple of months. And the third bucket of money is what are you going to live on while you're doing the first 2 things? Once you get that business to cash flow positive, there's another time period to profitability to when you can pay yourself, right? And so, that's just business ownership. That's not franchising specific, but a lot of people just don't understand kind of all the different moving parts. And so that's one of the things I help clarify for people, and also make sure that they're putting that in a pro forma and they know how to, what are the questions to ask so that you can actually build a good pro forma. You're going to ask the franchisor, you're going to get some of the information out of the FDD, but most importantly, you're going to talk to franchise owners and ask them, when did your business break even, right? How many months did it take you? Because some business models naturally break even quickly and some business models naturally take longer to break even. So that's that's typically a big question that most people don't quite understand and aren't exactly sure how to ask. So hopefully that answers your question.
And part for Rob and I, again, going back to making sure it's the right fit, a big part of making sure it's the right fit is the franchise agreement. And we're very fortunate enough to have a very good friend of ours who graduated from the Wharton School of Business, who knows how to read agreements written by attorneys. We didn't have to hire an attorney, but we definitely had the opportunity to sit with the two founders, discuss some of our concerns, and made several changes to the agreement that made us feel comfortable that we could move forward and not have all these worries down the road. And it's very important to make sure you have not just yourself reading the agreement, but have, whether it's an attorney or someone that knows how to read agreements, to read it and to give you some solid advice of things that you may need to change on there.
Yep. Which brings up a very good point. A couple of things that most people have a question mark about is financing. How do I get financing to start a business? Because it's different than, consumer lending. And also attorney, legal advice, and typically CPAs, right? So CPA, attorney, and financing. I have resources across the country, and we'll make introductions on your behalf if that's of interest to you. So, Rob, you were going to say something.
No, I was just going to say that it truly is that important to understand it. If you walk in and you rent a car or you open up a bank account, they put something in front of you to sign and you just sign it and that's what it is. You're not taking a rental car agreement and taking it to a lawyer and having them pick through all of it. But for something, like a franchise agreement, the FTD, they're all different. They're all over the place. You definitely want to understand what's in there. And that took us some time. And like Wayne said, we have some good resources that helped us through all of it and some franchisees before, including David, to say, is this typical for, a contract like this? Ask those questions, but it was important for us to understand what was in that agreement.
Made some interesting points about the capital needed to start such a business, and this is actually a good segue into audience questions. Brian in the chat asks, how did you all go about obtaining the necessary capital to start your businesses?
Yeah, so for me, this is an advantage from the pandemic, and I don't know, Rob and Wayne, if this applies in your case, but one of the concepts I was afraid to, what did I buy? I bought one truck and 40 dumpsters to start with, and that's not cheap, right? So it's a big chunk of money that I had to put down. When I was first looking into concepts, that kind of number really scared me. And so I looked into concepts with a lot lower investment. When the pandemic came around, the SBA is now forgiving your first 6 months of principal and interest. And that's a ton of money for the size of loan that I'm taking out through the SBA. So, so to answer your question in the roundabout way, I chose to do SBA financing. So that's the Small Business Administration, gives you a decent-ish kind of high, but interest rate. And it allows you to get funding for a good portion of your business.
Rob, or Joe, to answer your question, most people are not familiar with the 401k rollover program. So there's a government program that allows you to transfer your retirement savings into a retirement vehicle that you can then invest into a business that you own. So it's called a self-directed IRA. And essentially, you're not taking a penalty and you're not taking early withdrawal or paying taxes on it. So there's no early withdrawal penalty and there's no taxes. So that would be one vehicle. Usually that's partnered with an SBA loan of some kind. There's lots of unsecured lines of credit in order to get like working capital loans. So SBA loans, 401k rollover, and then what I always tell people is home equity is the easiest way and the least expensive way to get a big chunk of money. And one of the practices that my wife and I have, we're actually doing it right now, which is also a good way. But as things get squirrely, we're at a peak of a market, so real estate is valuable, and then things get squirrely, and so interest rates drop. So if you can, just doing a cash out refinance is actually pretty smart. If you're, personal opinion, if you're not using that cash out to pay off credit cards, but you're using that cash out to buy assets like a business or real estate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the other thing, Dave, with that too is like is securing your home equity line of credit when the housing market is high. Like you're gonna tie up a lot of that equity for yourself, which is a good thing when you go to do, for example, an SBA loan, because so for my case, I used a home equity line of credit to tie up any equity in my house. So there was no more equity in my house for the bank to take another lien on. So they couldn't take a lien on my house as well because I had already used this home equity line of credit at a lower interest rate. So I agree, the home equity line of credit is a good play.
Fantastic. And the SBA is going to take a second lien on any personal assets, real estate, whatever. So that's just typical. And Jessica makes a good point. Like, make sure that you put that money in your bank account, take that second loan, and then your assets more protected, or at least you got a stronger cash position.
And Joe, to circle back, that's where people just have to understand the risk to reward of it. There's a definite risk there, and people work hard to have the equity in the home that they do, and that's not an easy. Your SBA loan, you're guaranteeing that money if you're unable to repay through the business. It's not an easy thing for people to face, but if you have it in you and you're willing to take that risk and you see something in front of you, the rewards, I can tell you from owning your own business are incredible. So it's that risk to reward that is, if you know what the risk is and, you work hard. To me, I know it's cliche, but you work hard and the rewards will be there, and, it'll all come back.
That is true. Question from Jeffrey. When you are looking to get into franchising, what are some things that might steer you away from franchising with certain corporations and organizations?
Do any of you guys want to jump into that?
There's one word for me, and that's culture. For us, walking in, and we've been around enough to know we were looking for somebody with a good culture, good positive energy, walking into any of the restaurants, which we walked into a ton of different restaurants just to feel it. The energy was great. The vibe was great. The culture was great. That was by far the number one thing that we were looking for, was good, positive energy, culture. People liked working there. People liked the food, like Wayne said before, like the atmosphere. That was what was most important for us.
That's a great point. I went on a camping trip with a bunch of guys, and a lot of them are business owners and et cetera. And we got into this very conversation, right? Like, why would you franchise if you already know a lot about business? That person was talking to me, but also it makes me think of Rob. As the conversation went on, I kind of realized after the fact, if you need to be the most important person in the room, you probably should be an entrepreneur and just be the leader of your organization and do that. If you love the idea of being part of a team, and what I mean by team is like a nationwide brand, and a tide rises all boats, and you get charged by things like culture, surrounding yourself with people that are smarter than you. That's what a high caliber franchise looks like. And so, and it can be the opposite, right? Rob made a very good point. If you find that the people that are already in the organization are not super sharp and don't impress you with their best business background, whatever, then it's probably not a good franchise to get into. But yeah, I think that's what I like about franchising. It's about being part of something that's bigger than you and sharing best practices and having that collaboration with other owners that are doing exactly what you're doing. Jessica mentioned, she had to turn over an employee, and nobody likes firing people. I don't care how long you've done it. It's not fun, right? And then there's a hole in your business that you got to fill. So then you've got that angst. And so it's very nice to talk to a business owner, a peer of yours, to say, hey, have you run into this before? Because I think before you fire the person, I think I got to fire this person, whatever. And it just gives you that sense of calm. So clearly, I think there's lots of benefits to being part of franchising, but it's not for everybody. And I'm the first person to say that.
And one of the questions that Rob and I asked the two founders when we met with them is, what is their goal? Like, what are their goals in the next 5 to 10 years? I had to see if it was in line of what our ultimate goal is over these next 5 and 10 years. I want to see if it was in line because, as we looked at a couple, other different types of Mexican fast food type franchises. There was, again, obviously the brand was very important, but the opportunity for us to help build that brand, have the opportunity for us to expand our business. Maybe not just in New Jersey, but maybe in other states. And so if a franchise was too big and there was too many franchise locations, maybe there wasn't, our opportunity was very limited with other franchises, where with Bubba Coos, it was something almost, not necessarily the ground floor, but something that we could really help build. And hopefully years to come, and to get to our same goal as Bubba Coos.
That's a very good point. One of the things I talk about in my consultation with every candidate is, do you want to be part of an established brand or an emerging brand? And then we talk about the differences of each, and why. Why would you want to be part of an emerging brand versus an established brand? And what does that look like from a cultural standpoint? Where where the brand is in the growth curve, and why does that matter to you as a franchisee, and things like that. So that's a very good point, Wayne.
Yeah, and to go back to what you're saying, it was a peace of mind for Rob and I, because it wasn't like a newly started franchise, but it was somewhere in the middle. Mm-hmm. A good track history, someone that we could kind of help continue that journey with the rest of the franchisees. But again, not where they saturated the market with the same, with not opportunities for us, but again, not to a point where they just started and they didn't have a track history, and that probably made us a little bit too unsettling and put a lot of doubts. It helped our, again, with where they were at, it helped our decision.
Perfect.
And then another good question. Sorry, Joe. Another good question I think to consider is like who, when we talk about team building, right, and that being such a critical part of your business, is who are the people that you're going to be working with, right? So who are your employees? Do you want to have 20 estheticians working with you? Do you want to have 2 truck drivers? Do you want to have salespeople? Like each one of those categories they're very different. They draw different types of people and different personalities, and at the end of the day, managing people is one of the hardest parts. So think about those people that you're going to be managing.
That's an excellent point, Jessica. One of the things that I say is what's really fun about my role as a franchise consultant is I'm no HR department, right? So, we don't need to be politically correct because in our individual conversation, because what matters is what's a good fit for you, right? So if you're a person that excels at managing men or women, let's know that, right? If you're somebody that really doesn't want to manage blue collar workers, let's know that. If you like working with blue collar workers. That's right. So it's about directing you towards a business that's going to actually deliver on what you really want. And for me, that's key, right? It's build the business that you want to own so that you don't have a business that owns you. I mean, and there's a trick to that, and you have to pay attention on the front end to a lot of things.
Just real quick, I just wanted to say that, building a brand, it's hard. So somebody could say to Wayne and I, well, why don't you guys just open up Wayne and Rob's Burritos? If it's the same thing without franchising. But what franchising does is I can tell you personally, if I saw Rob and Wayne's on the side burritos, I wouldn't go there. But the liking the brand of Bubba Coos and what it is before we open, obviously people are going to know, and word of mouth, and they recognize the brand. It's like I said, it's really hard to build a brand. I know that firsthand. And if you like what the founders have done with their brand, it can help you infinitely.
I think a lot of people can sympathize with the difficulty in building a brand. But Johnny asks, do corporate franchise entities provide market analysis on behalf of prospective franchise owners? And what if market analysis does not prove correct?
I'll go ahead and take that unless you guys want to jump in. When he says market analysis, I would imagine he's referring to like the territory maps and the psychographics and demographics. And the answer is the franchisors deliver very extensive data on who your core customer is and how many customers you have in your area, et cetera. So as an example, and I'll just give a very simple one. One of the things I liked about Elements Massage is that not only did we know that our core customer had this income level and this psychographic within, and we also knew the number of people that met that in the 5-mile radius around our store. But we also knew that like 74% of our core customer base owned an iPhone, not just a smartphone, right? And then, 42% of those people make purchases on their iPhone. So that level of data and detail is highly beneficial when you're making decisions on marketing spend and what kinds of marketing spend you're going to make and what, right? So the short answer is yes, good franchisors do that, and not all franchisors do, right? So when you're, and this comes back to kind of my coaching, when you are asking questions of the franchise system, how robust is the system that you're buying into? And what does that really mean, right? So what is your customer acquisition strategy, and on and on. So the short answer is yes, most of them do deliver what you're asking.
Awesome. We'll take one more audience question before we're out of time here, unfortunately. But before we do, just want to say thanks again to our entire panel and David for helping us set this up. Hope everybody enjoyed it. So let's close with Warren's question. What are some of the challenges of opening a sport or fitness related franchise during this time, such as a gym?
I'll go ahead and answer that too. I would say, again, depending upon the franchisor and what the franchisor delivers. So because we were talking about a yoga concept earlier, I'll just stick with that one. That particular franchise brand and or family of brands, because there are multiple different boutique fitness concepts under one roof, I believe has done a fantastic job in managing the COVID chaos, right? So franchisor jumped in to help with, conversations with your landlord, right? So how do you, most importantly, they saw the challenge that boutique fitness was having with concepts like Peloton or Mirror. And so they were ahead of that. And back in 2018, 2019, they built a studio and they started recording classes to deliver online streaming classes. So when you talk about the value of being part of a brand and a team, independent fitness concepts are just not going to do that, right? And many franchisors did not foresee this or have that already in place. What does that translate to the franchise owner? Their memberships didn't fall apart, right? Their memberships kept on because people that were members actually could engage with the brand and take classes at home, and they didn't have to go search and find something new online. So that connectivity to the brand, the stickiness of the brand actually worked. So real estate is a very strong positive for both food and fitness as spaces become available. Most importantly, labor, right? And in a down economy, you have to think as a business owner, you think opposite of as an employee. So when unemployment is really low, it's very difficult for business owners. And when unemployment rises, that means awesome talent is available for you to snatch up and help you grow your business. And so I would say those two big things are a big, strong positive for any fitness brand right now.
Completely makes sense. Well, we'll go ahead and start wrapping up then. Thank you all so much once again to our panel for providing their insight and expertise on the world of franchising. Hope everyone out there who was in the chat and asking questions learned something, and we hope we informed your decision on whether or not to get into the game of franchising. For more info on our partner showcases and webinars in the future, highly encourage you all to subscribe to the FOS newsletter. If you want to learn more about franchising, I dropped a link to David's info in the chat. So feel free to click on that, schedule a call with him, and start your own journey. And highly encourage you all to connect with all of our panelists on LinkedIn, Twitter, any other relevant social media as well. Thank you all so much once again. We'll talk to you very soon. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
Thank you.